With the NFL wildcard weekend in the rearview mirror, there were several teams that were coming out this weekend looking to prove that they even belonged in the playoffs. Meanwhile, there was one particular team that was playing with purpose and with a heavy heart. There were two teams at least out there playing for respect. Want to find out how wildcard weekend went? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Pro Style.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Dutch! Don't do it! Woo! No way! Woo! 85! Crying out loud! You're making me, you're driving me nuts!
But behold.
Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you guys so much for joining us yet again on another edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Once again, you're gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo, and just want to tell you guys I appreciate all your love and support, and definitely appreciate what you guys have been saying out there, which hadn't been very much lately. But we gonna keep going on, ain't we?
Bruh.
Like we always do.
Bruh.
But before we get into it, want to give my sincerest condolences and my prayers to those that were affected by those fires out in Los Angeles. We also want to give our sincerest thanks to all the firefighters and our deepest gratitudes to them that are out there saving lives, helping people. And want to give a special gab out to the Arizona Cardinals, who made the Los Angeles Rams home game the success that it was. It's really awesome when you can see groups of people come together, and even rivals come together in this time to remember that it is just a game, but yet and still it's also an opportunity for us to put aside our differences, and also help one another in a cause that is much bigger than either of us. Well, let us get into Super Wildcard Weekend, as several teams were looking to make their marks and other teams were looking to push the envelope in not only getting into the divisionals, but also getting some respect. As there are a lot of teams out there, there are a lot of fans out there that are really not sold on certain teams. And as you all know, there are a lot of teams that are just trying to prove themselves, and to individuals like myself. But let us get into Super Wild Card Weekend as we start in Houston. And the Houston Texans 32 and the Los Angeles Chargers 12. Now, I will say this. This was a game that I was watching with my son. And guys, I'm going to say it just like this. Los Angeles was in control of this football game. And all of a sudden, and this is why it's so important to remember, guys. A game, no matter what the ebb and flows of this game are, you are never out of a game. And it looked so much like this Houston Texans team was at one point, they were out of this game. We can sit and we can look. But the reality of it was the Texans were not playing good football, and the Chargers looked like they were just going to run away with this thing. They got 2 field goals on their first 2 drives. Then they get a fumble on their very first play. And then Stroud throws an interception, but then here comes Justin Herbert throwing an interception afterwards. But Houston's unable to do anything with it. Then we look here, and the Texans are able to, just that quick, you get 2 drives and 10 points. As soon as Herbert, the last Houston punt, Then you end up with 10 unanswered points. A drive that went 13 plays, 99 yards in 5 minutes and 17 seconds, which was wonderfully orchestrated by CJ Stroud, and which culminated in a 3rd and 16, which was culminated by 2 CJ Stroud big plays, and where he fumbles the football just inside of the 5-yard line and throws it down the field to Xavier Hutchinson to the Chargers, to nearly midfield to the Chargers 49 for 34 yards, turning into what could have been a disaster. To me, that was the turning point of this game, where it looked like the Houston Texans were just going to get absolutely run out of the building on a 3rd and 16. Stroud is able to recover the football on the fumble and able to chunk it down the field to Xavier Hutchinson for not only a big first down, but in my opinion, the shifting, a seismic shift in this game, because as we all know, the Chargers got 6 points in the first quarter, and that was it. And I'm not talking about the rest of the game, but you're talking about nearly just 2 quarters of just total silence. The Chargers were just non-existent. And they had an opportunity. I remember looking at my son and said, they're going to lose this game if they score. And as soon as Houston put this on there, I was like, this is it. And then Houston not only got the ball back with 27 seconds left, they were able to go 45 yards and get down the field for a field goal attempt, as Kaimi Fairburn was able to kick a 41-yarder to give them a 10-6 lead. And I remember thinking to myself, and they get the football back. And I was like, that's it. And you couldn't get any more hand-me-downs for the Texans. Then there's a fumble. Once again, another turnover, as he puts the ball on the ground. Mixon puts the ball on the ground. But then Chargers decide to go for it and turn it over on downs. After that, it just turned into a typical Herbert blowing a game, pick six. You're talking about pick six. Then you get a basically back-to-back interceptions by Justin Herbert. And, of course, there's an interception that ends the game. But ultimately, you're looking at, you got a pick six, and then you get a touchdown by the Texans, which pretty much put the game out of reach. The Chargers did put a junk touchdown. I ain't gonna say a junk, but they did make it 25-12 with about 9 minutes left in the game. 10 minutes left in the game. But then the Texans almost ran 7 minutes off the clock with a 14-play, 74-yard drive that just absolutely ate up the remainder of the game and ate up any of the hopes of Justin Herbert getting his first playoff win, as he will continuously have that Kirk Cousins-like bug running around with him. A great regular season QB, but he just can't get it done in the playoffs. And this was a game that the Chargers are going to look at and say, how did we not win this game? Because, it was like the Texans spotted you the first quarter and a third. Or I'd say quarter and a half. And after that, it was just like, you knew that Houston was going to find a switch eventually. That's what I didn't understand. You knew this was not going to last. And I guess they just felt like their defense was going to lean. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. CJ Stroud found something, and yeah, that ultimately is what it was. But let's check out the box score. As we see, CJ Stroud was 22 of 33, 282, a touchdown, and an interception, as well as a fumble that he recovered. Joe Mixon was 25. I didn't realize he had 100 yards in this game. Mixon had 25 carries, 106 yards, and a score. C.J. Stroud, surprisingly, and he had a 27-yard scamper in this game, showing some shades of what he did sparingly at Ohio State. He does have some wheels for it, but he does not like to run, but he will. 6 carries, 42 yards. Nico Collins went over 100 yards receiving in this game, 7 for 122 and a touch. Xavier Hutchinson with that big 34-yarder on 3rd and 16. Then you had John Mechie with that fumble. He's got to learn to he's got to hang on to the football. They were definitely going at it. 4 for 28. Kate Stover was important. 4 grabs, 28 yards. I know a lot of people are going to say, nah. Yeah, no, but he had some big grabs in that football game. And the defense for Houston really kept them in this game. Will Anderson Jr. had a sack and a half. Mario Edwards had a sack and a half. And you can't say enough about the defense that Derek Stingley played in this game. He was so amazing in his coverage. They did a great job of blocking up Daniil Hunter. And he didn't get a single sack. He had 3 tackles in this game. But on the other side, I mean, they couldn't contain Will Anderson. And I think that's ultimately what DeMeco Ryans was looking at when he went out and signed Daniil Hunter, or when he wanted him signed, is you wanted to get that dangerous duo on the side. And, of course, I talked about Derek Stingley with his 2 interceptions, and Eric Murray had the pick 6, and Kamari Lassiter really wrapped it up. And needless to say, Houston was just so good in many areas defensively. And that is where you're looking at a defense that's going to be very dangerous moving on to the next round, and everybody's excited about this next matchup, barring bad officiating. Sorry, Chiefs fans. But let's look at Justin Herbert and the Chargers. I don't know why the Chargers went away from running the football. This is what they've done all season, and you put the ball in Herbert's hands 32 times as opposed to J.K. Dobbins, 9 carries, 26 yards. Not great, not bad, let me phrase it, not terrible. But you're Jim Harbaugh. You're supposed to stick with it. I get it. Herbert's your guy. But he was sacked 4 times. And needless to say, the way you slow down a good pass rush, such as the Texans, you got to run the football. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of teams in this that when you see me do my roundup before these games kick off this week, you're going to see me say or analyze that this team better run the football. Ladd McConkey had a great game. I would say a career game. 9 carries, 9 catches, 197 yards, and a score. Will Dissly, 2 of 16, but outside of that, there was nothing else. It was just a Ladd McConkey show. So you're looking at the defense. What Deion Henley had 10 total tackles. Alohi Gilman, 10 tackles. Troy Dye, 8 tackles. Khalil Mack had 2 sacks in this game. Joey Bosa had a sack. That was all the 3 sacks combined was the 2 elite pass rushers of Bosa and Mack. But the question is, what do the Chargers do next? I will be doing a show on the Chargers about what they need to do next. The first thing they got to do is they got to commit to the run. And I think ultimately they're going to have to get themselves another back to do that. I believe Justin Herbert is still a quarterback that is a phenomenal in-season quarterback. He's just not that guy that you can lean on to win a playoff game. I'm sorry. That is just the way I see it. And the Chargers go home. The Houston Texans will be flying off to Arrowhead to get a piece of possibly stopping history. Ravens 28, Steelers 14, as the Steelers have already got questions brewing after this game. There'll be more on that in the coming week. But it was all about the Ravens. Now, many of you are going to watch this game and say, the Steelers made a game out of this. They almost did. I'm not going to sit here and take anything away from the fight that they had. But once they got back in this game, I was ultimately saying, okay, this is what I need from you. And I remember looking at my son and said, okay, in order for Pittsburgh to get back in this game, after they got down 21-0 at the half, they got to score on their first drive of the second half. And ultimately, they did. And then they scored yet again. But they did not stop the Ravens from scoring. So it ended up being 28-14. However, when you look at this was a low scoring game considering the amount of times the teams touched the ball. Now, the first half was a lot of touches because there were quite a few times there were punts in this game, But also, if you're the Steelers, you also have to understand you only had a limited amount of touches. This is what I mean. Russ throws the ball deep to Austin. Now, I get it. Pickens had double coverage. But Austin ended up having 3 guys around him. Ain't no way. Ain't no flipping way I'm playing that game. And I can understand the Pittsburgh Steelers are talking about they might move on from Pickens. I get it. The guy is a head case. But the reality of it is the boy can ball. I don't understand what the issue is here. You got nothing as far as receiving weapons. You don't. And Arthur Blank is just what I don't understand what the hire here was. If I had to question Mike Tomlin about one thing, it's the play call. Mike Williams had a 37-yarder. Van Jefferson had a 2 for 37 and a touchdown. Najee Harris had 3 catches for 41 yards. Pickens had 5 for 87 in a score, including that 36-yarder. And he had 1 call back for offensive interference. It was obvious, Steelers fans. Yeah, you can't complain about that one. It was obvious. Adarius Washington for the Ravens had 7 tackles, as well as Landon Roberts had 14 tackles. Patrick Queen, 10. Cameron Hayward, 10. The ageless wonder. Alex Highsmith picked up the lone sack for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nnamdi Matabuke had 2 sacks. Owe had 1 sack, and Michael Pierce had 1. But the story of this game is going to be, for me, I'm looking at Najee Harris. He had 6 carries for 17 yards. Possibility he may not be coming back. Compared to Derrick Henry, who had 26 carries, 186 yards, 2 scores. Lamar Jackson, 15 for 81. And I'll tell you, just like I've been telling you, Ravens fans, look at that. Now, I get it. The score is a lot closer than what the game was. We could sit here and we can debate this all day. I never had a sense that Pittsburgh was going to get back in this game. Now, I did tell my son if they scored on their first possession, this could become a game. But ultimately, the Baltimore Ravens stopped trying to make Lamar Jackson the hero. Gave the ball back to who should have the ball. How many times do I keep telling you? This is the guy who should have the ball. Derrick Henry. To me, this ain't so much about why Pittsburgh couldn't win the game. It's more about how the Ravens went out there and took this game. They just took the game. And the reality of it is, anybody can sit here and say, well, they were just better. Well, I will say this. Mike Tomlin overachieved with this Steelers team. I don't care what anybody says. They overachieved. Because the reality of it is, Mike Williams was late to the party. George Pickens is a head case. And I'm going to be honest with you, unless he gets some psychological help, you're going to get good ups and downs with George Pickens. To me, he's like a child trapped in a big man's body. He's very, very talented. You cannot question how talented this guy is. He just can't get it together. He has got a lot of head issues, ego and all of that good stuff. But the guy could be a phenomenal football player if he just got it together. Don't know. But as I said, Ravens 28, Steelers 14. Ravens now will fly to Buffalo. Oops, did I give that away? Yeah, I kind of did. Because that is who they will face after your boy Mr. CeeLo called it out. Remember what I told y'all? The Broncos, then they got all happy about getting to the playoffs, and they got absolutely walloped. 31-7 by the Bills. And I said ultimately it was going to be a game where Bo Nix was in over his head. I mean, look, 13 of 22, 144 yards. And then the Buffalo defense just said, hey, look, we're going to force him to beat us throwing the ball. And he couldn't. I mean, you look at Sutton had 5 grabs for 75 yards. And after that, it was a wrap. Troy Franklin, the rookie, had 2 catches for 54 yards. And outside of that, it was just it was the Josh Allen show. Then you also look at James Cook, who had 23 carries, 120 yards, and a score. But ultimately, to me, what really set this game off amongst many Buffalo games is the fact that you had so much balance here. 26 throws by Josh Allen, 23 runs by James Cook. It reminds me of the Buffalo Bill team of early this season. I would say like the last 7-8 games of the season, it became super Josh Allen. And you're not going to win a championship like that. Josh Allen has to be the guy commanding, but he cannot be the only guy making plays. When you get 23 carries out of James Cook and he's just balling out, that is where they're at their best. They're going to beat a lot of teams when they do that. Even Curtis Samuel, a guy who they got in free agency, a former Carolina Panther, had 3 grabs, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Beautiful touchdown. Ty Johnson, two grabs, 26, and another touch. Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and even Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman were down the list. See, Josh Allen is going through what Patrick Mahomes is going through now. He's able to get guys on the same scoring level and get these guys in the right spots. He is that good now. He doesn't necessarily, all he needs you to do is give him a space. Make the right play, make the right read. He'll find you. As I said, this was a game where, as I said, this was not going to be a competitive game because the moment is going to be too big for Bo Nix, and Buffalo is just going to be too good. First downs, doubled. Buffalo 26, Denver 13. Buffalo even almost doubled up the number of plays they ran, 72 to 42. Almost did double up total yards and nearly doubled up passing yards. Definitely nearly tripled the rushing yards, and no turnovers in this game. But the time of possession was just absolutely obliterating. 41, almost 42 minutes to 18 minutes. This wasn't even close. They've got a lot to do before they become contenders. But as I said, they overachieved. They finished the season at 10-7, and the Buffalo Bills will host the Baltimore Ravens. In a matchup that I really thought was going to be a lot closer until we got news that Christian Watson was going to be out for the rest of the remainder of the season, and it's going to be hurtful because it's going to finish most of his season next year. The Eagles 22, Packers 10. I heard somebody say something along the lines of Jordan Love is a talented quarterback, but he has to get these moments under control. I think this was a moment. I think he had a lot of moments where he just tried to reach. And I didn't like what Rex Ryan said about him, saying he's got to get these under control. He's not a good player yet, this, that, and the other. I mean, let's not forget that the first touchdown was a gimme. Let's not forget that. We can sit here and blame Jordan Love all we want to. When you're up against a team like the Eagles, you understand that you are going to have to be patient, but at the same time, you can't hurt your team. But by that time, they were already pressing. And you could tell he was already pressing, trying to get this thing down the field, forcing it down the field. And Darius Slay picks him off. Ultimately, that turns into a punt. But as I've said many times, I would rather that kind of an interception where it's down the field. Nobody really thinks about that. They say, oh, you threw an interception. He threw an interception when they were at their own 33-yard line. Yes, it was a 2nd and 7, but it was a good take. He tried to take Wicks, but they're able to kick. They're able to punt it away. They hold, and they drive for 7, almost 8 minutes. And there's a field goal miss. So while I listen to guys like Rex Ryan say that he's got to correct certain things, one thing he's got to get is a reliable number one. Christian Watson's a great player, but he's been hurt entirely too much. We know what he can do when he's on the field, but his injuries are just piling up, man. And then you see Green Bay come out and get a field goal to get on the board for their first drive of the second half. Then you get Philly coming back out and they score a touchdown. Then, of course, they swap scores and it becomes a field goal that from Philly that pushes it to 19-10. And, of course, Green Bay goes for it on downs late in the fourth quarter. And unfortunately for them, middle way through the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, they're unable to get it. Philly comes back, kicks a field goal, makes it 22-10. Then, of course, Love throws an interception. Like I said, those interceptions are not created equal. As I said, I would take those two. But ultimately, you're talking about a guy who's in his second season of starting, and I think he's doing some major good things. He's basically a second-year guy, Rex. Chill out. He's not as bad as some of these guys that are running around here. He's going to get it. But the Philadelphia Eagles will host the winner of the Rams and the Vikings, and I think you guys know who that was. But let us get to the comparable upset of the weekend. Commanders 23, Buccaneers 20. Now, this was a game that was rather interesting. And I say it raw, though interesting. Because you look at the statistics of this game and you say to yourself, this was a highly contested football game. You go in at halftime, it's 10-10. And you get the sense that the Commanders are hanging around here. And anytime this football team hangs around, it's trouble. Now, the Buccaneers are wildly better than their 10-2 record would indicate. Baker Mayfield is one of those guys that he's up, he's hot, and then he's cold. He's not good. So, looking here, you got Jaden Daniels, 24 of 35, 2 touchdowns, 268. Then he had 36 yards on the ground. Now, the running game was widely absent. But what I really loved was the fact that they did what they did with Mariota. And then you got Eckler, Brian Robinson doing his thing, and Jeremy McNichols. They tried everything to run the football. I tell you, Dan Quinn tries to do all he can to eliminate the amount of blows Jaden Daniels takes. But the reality of it is he put this game on this kid's back, and this kid did what he had to do. And that's what you love as a coach. You love a guy that is capable of just coming out there and running the offense and doing what they got to do. It was a situation that you look at in a lot of these games. You need 2 scores. This guy delivered. And ultimately, when they were down 17-13. Baker Mayfield puts the ball on the ground. They get the ball back. And in just 4 plays, they're able to take this thing in the end zone. And ultimately, Baker and company, they come back with a 8-play, 61-yard, 5-minute drive. Only problem with that is when you tie the game with 4:41 left, you give the opposing team 4 minutes to do what you don't want them to do, which is run the flipping clock out. And this was masterfully done. Absolutely masterfully done. Eckler came in, had some really big runs. And then on a 3rd and 2, Daniels uses the biggest weapon that he has, which is his legs. He saves it for the most important moment. And after they get that first down, and Tampa Bay goes through the process of trying to stop the clock, knowing that they're in field goal range, it just becomes a matter of the Washington Commanders setting up the kick for Zane Gonzalez to put it through from 37, and they tag Tampa Bay out. And it's a horrible way to go out if you're the Buccaneers, but the reality of it is, you look at the way the Buccaneers played this game. The Commanders dominated this game. You look at the way the time of possession and the amount of plays. We've seen a common theme here today. Only difference is the Commanders didn't win by a wide margin. This was one of those games where if Tampa Bay could get off the field, this was a game that they lost because they couldn't get the football back. Look at this, 69 plays to 44. You're not going to win a football game if you cannot get off the field and you have these long sustaining drives, which the Commanders were able to do. Jaden Daniels did a masterful job orchestrating these drives and getting his team in the right positions to be successful. You're looking at this team was 8 of 15 on 3rd downs. Meanwhile, the Bucs were 5 of 9. They were also 3 of 5 on 4th down. So when you're talking about a team that is going through, making plays, doing what they do, because there was a total of 8 drives to 7, and for that wide of a gap in time of possession, that means Jaden Daniels and his offense are doing a phenomenal job Not only moving the chains, but also moving the chains in small bunches. And the way you do that is by good runs, good short passing, and taking your shots when you can take them. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield is only set to say that he's got to be better, which fumbles have always been a problem with Baker. I mean, you can't, look at it and say 15 of 18. And then Bucky Irvin only has 17 carries. He has 17 carries for 77 yards. Yeah, there were times I thought, why are the Buccaneers throwing the football? Bucky Irvin's running like that, 17 for 77. I got to keep feeding him the rock. I ultimately say run the football. Even though Baker only had 3 incompletions. Yeah. But, as I said, the Commanders will be going to Detroit. And this ought to be a pretty darn good one. They will play Saturday night. And the Rams 27 and the Vikings 9, as I called this game, which on a show in which I did not post, but I'm going to tell you, I'm glad I didn't, because I saw this game as being the other way around, because the Rams didn't play anybody last week. And I always say that rust is a bad thing, but looking at this game, it looked more like that the Minnesota Vikings were the ones that were dealing with a form of jet lag from that beating that the Detroit Lions gave them. I think ultimately what this game boiled down to was that the Rams saw some things that the Detroit Lions were able to do to harass Sam Darnold, and they were in his face for 9 sacks. But then I also got to put some of it on Darnold. Now, I get it. The offensive line for the Vikings has got to be revamped. I mean, to me, they've got to take at least a guard and a tackle in the first and second round. There's no if about it. These guys have to shore up that line. This has got to be something that if they're going to be successful, and I think Sam Darnold probably cost himself a couple $1 million. They've said that all over the broadcast last night, and I felt bad for him. But it's kind of like, you know Sam Darnold's old self is going to peep up, and it did. He was 25 for 40, 245, and he missed a lot of throws last night. Justin Jefferson was 5 for 58. Hockenson had a wonderful grab that was on the hip pocket. There was a lot of throws for Darnold, just like it was the other night, Sunday night, when instead of them being high, they were off target. And he was very fortunate. His receivers helped him out immensely. Jalen Naylor had a couple of throws that would have been touchdowns had he had them on target. Jordan Addison had to deal with the highs all night. I mean, I'm surprised this poor kid doesn't have back spasms or a concussion the way he was hitting the ground trying to go up and climb the ladder to get some of those awful throws that Darnold was putting out there. But Stafford finished 19 of 27, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, was sacked twice. Kyron Williams finished with 16 carries, 76 yards. Higbee, in his return, was 5 for 58. He also left this game with an injury. Puka Nacua, 5 for 44. Cooper Kupp had 1 grab, and it was a big one. I think it was a 3rd down conversion. 1 for 29 yards. And the defense for the Rams was just relentless. As I said, Darnold had the interception, was sacked 9 times, and also lost a fumble. Quentin Lake had 9 tackles. Christian Rosboom had 7 tackles. Neville Gallimore had a sack and a half, along with Byron Young. He also had a sack and a half. Michael Hoyt had a half a sack. Kilo Witherspoon, who was all over the place, even though he didn't get to the QB but once, but Kilo was all over the place last night. Kobe Durant had an excellent game. He had a sack. DeJuan Johnson had a sack. Braden Fisk, the guy who we all know about, he had a half a sack. Kobe Durant also had a pick last night. So this was a surprising effort by the Rams. If you're the Vikings, I mean, I'm not going to say this was a fluke the way they played. You know, you win 14 games. I just think they remind me of that Vikings team of a few years ago. They great regular season, and then they washed out in the playoffs. Blake Cashman had finished with a sack. Andrew Van Ginkel finished his great NFL season. Not sure if he's going to the Pro Bowl, but he finishes with 11 and a half sacks. Cashman along with Jonathan Greenard. Finishes with 12 sacks. And Blake Cashman, as I alluded to earlier, he finished with 4.5 sacks. He had a really good game with 11 tackles, as well as Ivan Pace Jr. He had 10 tackles. But looking at this game, I didn't want to say I knew this game was over at halftime, being that it was 24-3. 24-3. I felt like Minnesota was going to come out, but that pass rush was relentless. I mean, it was, and you can only say, what do you do? And I honestly don't know what the Vikings coaching staff was thinking when they just would not attempt to run the ball more. Aaron Jones, it's like they got pass happy trying to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. And Cam Akers had a couple of good runs. He had a 26-yard run. And my thing, at some point, if you got a team that is getting to your quarterback, you got to slow the pass rush down. And ultimately, I did not see a lot of runs. And I get it. You're in a deep hole. But you cannot just allow a defense to just tee off on your quarterback. And that's what it felt like. I don't know if it was Buck or Troy that said, why don't they just take a knee? Why are they still out there doing it? Ironically, the Vikings had more first downs. You know, it was 20-16. Total yards was 292 to 269. And ultimately, what killed the Vikings, as I said before, was these 2 turnovers. And you guys know, I say it on my college show. For every turnover, you've got to have an extra 100 yards in order to win this game. So you think about it. They would have had to have over 500 yards of offense to make this a game. And I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. They could have made this a game in the second half if they would just have not just back and just, we're throwing the football. Because when you can basically say in a nutshell, we're just going to pass the ball, what is the defense going to do? They're screaming at you. They're coming. But Vikings go home after a tremendous 14-3 season in the wild card. And the Rams will be making a visit to the city of brotherly love on Sunday. But guys, that is going to do it for us on Gridiron Gab Pro Style, the Super Wild Card Weekend Edition. Please make sure you comment down below and let us know what you think about your favorite team, or if it's just a take that you don't agree with, let me know what you think. Also, make sure you go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo and check out all the shenanigans that I will be caught up in on, off, and during the season. As well as go to the Facebook pages and the Facebook group of the same name, Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Make sure you join the group and make sure you befriend the show so that you can find out about all the wonderful things in our group. Be sure to join us for my analysis on the divisional games coming up this weekend on your same Gab channel, same Gab platform.
But behold, there is a warm breeze that comes from the west. The blazing sounds of victory fuel their everlasting quest. It is a call to arms, for they are here. An army that has the will to challenge and the will